Welcome back to the Two Promises podcast. Let's dive right into another exciting adventure with BD and crew as he pursues his new passion of one day finding the most epic bourbon. The Two Promises team send their special thanks to Hobie and the Huckleberries for their masterful theme music. So grab a glass, relax, and enjoy responsibly.
Baby says she's leaving if I don't stop drinking wine. So I switched to whiskey and I'm feeling fine. Drinking that smooth whiskey. No more wine. I like straight bourbon. Baby, you try the ride.
Is there a particular place that you could point to, or like an inspiration point where you're like, oh yeah, this is what inspired the thing? Or was it just, hey, let's get together and play? How'd that work out?
I don't want to, like, I feel like the beginning conversation that Nick referenced earlier where we decided we were going to make a game, we were doing what we often do, I'm pretty sure, in the beginning, which was like, you know, we play all these games and then you kind of get together and you talk about it. And it was, man, this was really cool, but, you know, what if they'd done this? Or like, I like how this mechanic works, but it felt a little clunky. Like, why don't they integrate this other thing from this other part? And we didn't, I don't know, at least for me, there was not like I don't think a super specific title that it really just was an amalgamation of so many things that I really enjoy doing. And like, how can I try to bring that vision? How can I coalesce these things into something that's really interesting and fun and engaging that I would want to play over and over and over again? Like, what are all the most enjoyable things in all these different aspects of games that I could bring together? And also what felt appropriate. Like, we didn't talk about this, but really, like, we tread the line a lot in the mechanics of the game between what would you actually do and what is actually fun. You know, like the combat cycle in the game is very easy to learn. What are we doing? Well, we're firing our cannons. We're maneuvering our ship. That's about it. That's about it. But there's way more to it. And, you know, that third kind of step, you know, I can get in close and I can dump my crew on there and we can go toe to toe and have a crew assault. So like, fundamentally it is reality, but the way it plays out is much more engaging and fun, and some of its abstract concepts and how it's applied. But what do you think?
I think it's like simulation versus game.
Yeah.
And finding, you know, something that's true to itself. I think you use the word appropriate. Like, there are clear moments where you have to make a decision between, do you want this to be like realistic, or do you want this to be fun? Because those are occasionally at odds. Ideally,
I lost my eye. I'm not playing this again.
Yeah, right. I guess that's one way, is to go literal with it. But like, you know, when you take over another ship, you've just nearly destroyed that ship. So what is probably realistic is you inherit all the qualities of that ship. But that is not, it's a real bummer.
Yeah. How much do I have to repair? What?
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
And it's like, right. And so then you say, okay, do we want our game to be about, you know, which could be interesting, managing how much damage you're doing versus your ability to succeed, and towing that line.
Yeah.
But, you know, and so we have to make that decision. So what we had decided is that our game is about blasting. It is about hitting as hard as, you know, like that tactile feel. So it's like, okay, well, that gets in the way of that if we go that direction. So we played around with that for a while. So what we ended up just sort of sticking with is, and we found a way to make it true in the world, is instead of taking on the aspects of that other ship, you're more or less breaking that other ship up and like integrating it into your ship. You're expanding your ship. And so you stay at the same level that you're at, let's say. So now if you almost died, then you're starting with a ship where, you know, yeah, you almost died. But it started as a philosophy, and then you had to play test it. And it's like, what did people actually enjoy? Like what added to the fun and what was okay? Where could we sacrifice? Mm-hmm. You know, the naval historian would be like, well, that's not how that worked, you know? And we had people that were that way who were like, I know about the actual thing and that's not how it worked. And it's like, okay, are we okay with that or not? And where does that go? So be mindful there.
Think I
the
remember
inspiration
that
part we kind of missed.
playing out.
Go
You
ahead.
basically have your like index card size things where your ships are, and you've got little places you can place cannons. But as you develop, you slide those to the side and you integrate another section of the ship. Is that kind of how that plays out?
So let's say, like you said, I think it's closer to kind of like a sheet of paper size.
Yep.
And there's like slots where you can put cannons. And so as you get cannons, you put them there. The cannons have numbers on them that tell you how many dice to roll. You can also add crew onto slots, and then like you can specialize the ship. When you get that bigger ship, you take another sheet size piece, which is the tier 2 version of the ship, and you overlay about half of the first ship. So it covers some of the information that was there, but it's also expanding the ship. So now you have a ship that's 1.5 sheets of paper big, with 2 more cannon slots, 3 more crew slots, and another specialist slot. It's also tougher, so it has more hull points. But that comes at a cost because you're a little less maneuverable. And so throughout the game, you'll go from a small ship, which is mechanically 1 sheet or 1 board, to 3 boards. You start with 4 cannons, you end up with 10. The cannons you start out with allow you to only roll 1 die each at a particular range. The ones at the end might do 3. So in the end, and you didn't, because you just did sort of the demo version, you didn't get to go all the way up, but 20 plus dice in a single roll. And the first time I have 2 12-year-old twins who played, and they played with another 12-year-old friends. Their hands weren't big enough. We were like, oh, this is a problem, a problem that we didn't expect. So even thinking about usability, or even making sure that we enable everyone to play, it's like we need to include a dice cup in the game. Because not everyone's going to be able to manage the number of dice, which is both cool, but yeah.
The powder barrel.
And we even oh man, it's so cool. And we even got a pretty fun headline from it. I thought, like we're working through, and it's like, and you may see it if you see any of the media, but it's like having a hook makes rolling this many dice a challenge, because you get up to these massive piles. And that's one of the things I love about the game the most. Like, the physical expansion matches the conceptual, and your power grows with the physical components. I just love that feeling. So
absolutely. Super cool. Was there a point in this development that was started out kind of casual, just like, oh man, wouldn't it be cool if this? At what point did you guys decide to go all in on it, develop a marketable project? Where did you have a point like that? What did that look like?
I think it's like 2 phases.
Okay.
The first one was, so what we had was a game that was play tested in pretty good shape. We knew that it needed more polish, but we could get there. And it had art, lots of art. And there's kind of this moment of, what do we do with this? Do we keep just doing it as a project for fun? Like you said, like you asked here. And there was a moment, oh man, it was quite a while ago, where it was like, are we going to self-publish? Because look what we put in. Or are we going to have someone else publish this and potentially give up the art, give up the theme, give up, like, to basically take our baby and let someone else raise it the way that they want. And they'd be like, it's not even a baby, it's a horse for pulling carts. And you're like, but and I think we had a sense of what the cost was for those 2 things, but also what the benefit was. But I will say, one of the guiding principles that we've had is like, we want to make a game for ourselves that we want to play. And and I mentioned this earlier, if all we end up with is like a treasured family heirloom, and we will be happy with that, because it enabled, best friends, and have been for a long time. We live in 2 different places. It gave us a good reason to meet at least once a week to talk. We always had games, but this was like further and deeper. And so we continue with that. And so we decided to go with crowdfunding. We said, we want to take this across the line. However, like 5 years or something like that passed before the second phase, where we went all in. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong in this, but Micah, I think you were ready any number of times over that 5 years to go all in. And you continued to say, like, let's crowdfund this by this date. Let's do this. Let's do this. And I would say my job and home and everything else just took up so much capacity
Yeah.
That it was like saying, hey, when I grow up, I want to live overseas. Like, it's awesome to say that whenever you're a kid, you know, like there's so many things that you say and you do that. And I kind of treated it like we were doing that, you know, because I was just like, I knew in my heart of hearts that I can't give what this is going to take at the level that I want to do it. And so there was a push and pull for me for good looks like this. And I don't see myself getting to a point where I think I know what it's going to take to get there. And I can't see myself actually being able to do that. And so I pushed a lot. And then would you say that's accurate for that phase?
Yeah. Yeah.
What was your experience during that time? Because,
well, that's the reality. You know, we're both married. We both have a bunch of kids and like full-time jobs. And so like it's a passion project. It's a love that we both shared. And, you know, there is no official deadline. There is no, you know, and like, I don't even think we started putting in some of those things until about like Nick alluded to, like, it's been probably a decade of us piddling away at this thing. And sometimes in enormous spurts of productivity, sometimes bigger droughts just because of life. But yeah, it was probably about 5 years ago or more that we said, okay, let's put some deadlines on it. Let's see what we can do. And all of the kind of extra things that are weighing into whether or not we can push forward, we'll kind of roll with the punches. We'll, you know, see what happens, but continue to polish it. Hopefully with the intent that this becomes a thing. And I mean, we actually got really, really close to pulling the trigger on some major steps right before COVID happened. Yeah. And that just kind of sent everything into a tailspin as well. I had a really good friend that, you know, published around the same time, one of his board games actually. And just, you know, the shipping costs went nuts. Like it was over a year for him the container costs.
$2,000 or $3,000 or something to like over $20,000.
Wow.
Right. So it took them a year to sort out just the mess from that with an already successfully backed game. And so, you know, we kind of took that as a okay, we're going to wait. It's okay. We've been waiting this long. And I think it's been really good because, you know, what I would say is it is way, way, way more intense than even my intense expectations were in terms of like learning all the stuff you think you know or don't know. Like, and for the past couple of years, I'd say it's been a pretty awesome growth and learning experience for us. Like we've worn so many more hats in just the past couple of years, like dug into processes that we just had vague inklings of, but no real depth on. And so I don't think there's ever like a right time, but it's like, you know, like I think things aligned in the way that they should have. And now we're at a point where we're about ready to see what happens.
Yeah.
I left my job in August we're in 25, so of 23, I guess.
Okay.
Yes, because it's been over a year. And so that put me in a place where I could do that. Now I took a good bit of time to kind of recharge, really connect with my kids. I was able to like take them to school and help with their homework and all these things I had really never been able to do. And I got to a point, and I will say that there was like, I wouldn't call it imposter syndrome, but there's a time where you're like just going through the actions and you're not seeing yourself in that way, you know? So like, I now feel very comfortable saying I'm the co-founder of Tortugas Games. I am a board game designer. I like all those things, you know, similar to what you were talking about with the art stuff before. It's like, objectively, yes, I had done all of those things, but it's only been like kind of the process of actually doing it and really investing it and being a part of it to where it became like kind of comfortable to more easily say that, you know, because, you know, I just felt like perhaps I was like, yeah, I'm the co-founder of Tortugas Games. And then I would have this voice in my head be like, yeah, but Tortugas Games isn't anything. You know, you haven't done anything. You haven't. And it wasn't like I didn't get depressed or anything about it. But, you know, I realized that, no, we have done these things. This exists. And that's about how we engage with it, what we want to do. So there was a moment where we did say, I think after where at least I was all in. And even that was multi-hearted because I was still actually looking for like a job that pays the bills. And yeah, there's this like kid kind of fantasy, which I don't think is a kid fantasy. I demean it to say that, that the game could be my sole source of income, or the company could be my sole source of income. But the second part was kind of freeing myself from even like, hey, yes, I'm working on it more, but even if this doesn't, I can still work on this as if it's a full-time job, even if it's not going to be the sole source of income, even if I never get a penny out of it. And so it is those mental things along the way where you say kind of, where are you? What do you do? So
yeah, so there's I think you touched on a few things that have just kind of shifted and migrated in recent years. One thing that you mentioned, hey, you left your full-time job, you got to spend more time with the kids. I think that's one thing that the pandemic really exposed people to, and what they want in their work-life balance, what their boundaries are. And I think that that's kind of opened a lot more people up to, you know what, yes, the work's good, the career's good, but family is a lot more important in a lot of ways. They're the ones that are going to be there forever, not necessarily this particular company. So that's an interesting thing that I think has occurred in the last 4-ish years. And then I'd like to touch on your mental transition of, yes, I am the co-founder of Tortugas Games. You guys were set up at Gen Con, the largest tabletop gaming convention, the largest gaming convention in the world. So I know a lot of creatives, a lot of people who are interested in these things, and many people would consider that a super huge milestone, pinnacle of success. So, I mean, you've got that going for you. So I'd say, boom, you got a big feather in your hat already.
yeah,
I appreciate that. Yeah. It's it's like Nick said, like sometimes you feel like a small fish in a big pond, which we very much are, even in that context of the industry side of things. But what I will say, we learned a couple of things through the years. We've been going to PAX Unplugged since like 2016. Just met awesome people, got a lot of play testers to play our game. One of the coolest experiences that we had was with a play tester who originally played our game in 2016 at PAX, and he found us this last year in Gen Con. Still following our social media, sought us out, brought his buddies over, and played the game with us, and just like still stoked, still pumped about it. Like that kind of stuff is everything for us. And just on the industry side as well, man, I am blown away by how cool everybody is. Like everybody that we've met has been so extraordinarily human and helpful, and just will just talk about anything with you, share anything with you, give you their time and their wisdom and their connections. And just that has been phenomenal. That's been very surprising. Hey, we're having a party over here tonight. Y'all come. We're going to pay for everything. Come.
People. You can
Talk
about your stuff, like whatever you want to do.
That's been such a cool, I guess, breath of fresh air. It's really awesome. Like the people are amazing.
Yeah. I think that, we're not participating in the mega business, the Wizards of the Coast, the Asmodee, Fantasy Flight. I imagine that there's some differences there, but there is this great community at this level and higher, so if you're talking multiple millions in a crowdfunding campaign, which, by the way, one of the biggest things we've learned is that number that you raise, it is not a reliable indicator of how successful your game is. There are plenty of experiences where people raise $1.5 million and they come out losing 200,000. Which makes sense because it's a business. It's all about sort of your margins. But the only thing you generally get to see is like how much money was raised. Right. And so I have been terrified of being like successful but not successful. Like, oh, we hit our funding goal, but like we're now deeply in debt or whatever it is. But we're going to be okay. We got a good business model, I think, overall, and we're trying to make it as accessible to many people as we want. But the anecdote that I'll give is at PAX Unplugged, I was walking around and I saw a game called Kavango. I'd never even heard of it. But what caught my eye is they had a sign that said something like 20% of proceeds go to wildlife conservation. It was clearly some sort of wildlife focused game. And I just asked about that. And next thing I know, I'm talking to the two co-creators who had been working scientists in Botswana, working on conservation. The work that they did there, they made a board game of. they start talking me through the game. The game sounds awesome. I don't, one of the things I've always had a vision to like build an environment and have creatures grow within that environment. Like Wingspan, I don't know if you've played that game, but like I wanted to work to build the environment and then have like birds grow. That's how that game works. There's a few other Evolution is another game that's kind of similar to that. And I think that they like nailed it in the best way I'd ever seen. All that was cool. But the bigger thing there was the woman who I was talking to basically said, it's incredible what you're doing. If I had to do it all over again, I would do it over again. Now, yeah, I thought, well, you were successful with it, but it was just this support of not many people actually, a lot of people have an idea, but not everybody goes through. And I think as we moved from the easy breezy fun days of what ifs and, oh, let's make a mechanic. And, that 80% of the game was designed in probably 6 months or maybe less. That last 20%, yeah, it's been 10 years or 11 years, but like there was as much, if not maybe 4 times as much work in that last 20%. And that is a gate. I started to think of it as like these gates that you pass through. And I can look back and see the gates that we pass through. The idea is the easiest thing with almost the most ROI because it feels good to have a cool idea. And I think, Brent, as we've talked, like you go through that next gate of, I'm going to actually try it. I'm going to do it. And I'm going to do this. And you keep going and you realize that there's fewer and fewer people sort of with you. And in this industry, like the people that are still with you are just, they're standing on the sideline when you're running the marathon and they're like encouraging you to go on because they want you to cross the finish line. And that has been really cool. And something that I would like, 2 things. I would encourage people to just keep going through the gate, like keep doing that. And then to also participate in whatever community that is, because there's nothing more sustaining than other people that have done it backing you. And then if you're making something that other people can use, like if you make your whiskey, which like I'm sure the value of someone drinking that whiskey or someone listening to this podcast, like that fuel is incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point that you make on hey, your action begets more action and your success, all of it becomes more and more fuel for you to keep driving towards that goal. So that kind of makes me think a little bit. You've talked about some of those fulfilling pieces that you guys have had along the journey. And now you kind of talked a little bit about how you're fueling yourself to keep you going through those test gates. I'm really interested to hear both of your perspectives. I think Micah's probably potentially got a little bit more time talking about this kind of topic, but a person's vision or the artistic vision, what does that mean to you guys just individually?
Oh man, there's so many topics for this for me. And what's interesting too is like throughout the last several years, like used myself as a case study to show my students what not to do, or what to do, in process. But like, one of the things I have definitely learned is that good art and I think just good things are often discovered. Like you can't sit there and think them up. You can't, come up with this grand vision and it ever really executed exactly as it is in your head. One of my favorite sculptors, Andy Goldsworthy, said like thought control can be the death of a work, so like what needs to happen authentically and organically. And so I think we both had a vision that has probably, and Nick can clarify his side of that, but evolved as time has gone on. And a lot of it really has been like, okay, I've created all of this, for me at least, all of this art around this particular area of the game or theme. And I love it, man. It's so cool. I'm really liking this. And then just on a random day, I'll be sketching something and I'll, draw. This is what happened literally with, like, I think we're on iteration number 5 with the game in terms of how it looks and feels to play. I draw another cannon and it's in a slightly different style, but and then I'm just like, oh, this is really cool. Ah, crap. So it's like, so now like that as a template is like incredible and it makes the experience richer. It is more
because now you feel like you have
right. Now I have to
everything else.
Now I have to go back and redraw hundreds of pieces of art, which I've done about 4 times now. So
to match that style is kind of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Like you find a better way to express that vision that you have. And it takes I think for both of us, like it takes a lot of grit just to kind of be like, okay, here we go again. Like, because we love it. Like it is something we deeply care about. And that experience visually, trying to match our goals for it as who we want to be as a business and individuals, and the experience that we want to share with the people that would play our games or interact with us, like that really kind of dictates everything that we do. And that rubs up against, business in certain areas, right? Like, is it good enough to ship it? Like, are we getting enough positive response around this to make it viable? And it's like you push back and forth, and we always try to find as best we can, I think, that sweet spot where like we are deeply proud of this thing and it feels how we want it to feel, and people also like it, which is like a really good thing. And I think that's hard to do sometimes, but yeah, just I think it always grows. And the truth with art, I think, is too, like it can always become something else. So you have to kind of at some point too rein in that vision and realize like this is very good. And so we can be satisfied letting it be what it is at this point. And then of course that creates an ending for you to pull into the next beginning, because you can't make a new game if you're still working on the other game. And so it's like, where do we get to a point where it's like, it is finished? Like, and, but I don't know, that's probably all over the place with that. But like, yeah, I've seen that vision, certain core tenets are true, but it's always a discovery process of what you didn't know was possible. And then having kind of the togetherness and the vision then to make it the whole thing again, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I got a buddy who talks about like, he says like, you just for the big vision, you should only be moving like 3% left or right at any given time. Like once you kind of know the direction that you're going in. Now that's in the context of a lot of people changing what you're doing, but that 3% over time can become a 180.
Right.
And often maybe should. But that's kind of like the don't write. Like you said, Mike, it's not about having that clear end goal and then how do I get to it? It's about getting started and thinking about the direction, so in terms of the artistic vision, we started with almost nothing, and, we didn't even know if Micah was going to be the artist. At one point in time, there was, someone else who had done some art, and we were like, maybe this, maybe that, maybe, and I will say that something else that I never kind of saw myself as, but I find myself doing this, like in the video game world, it's like art direction, and there was one point in time where I was like, I don't want to do this. I can't do this. But I realized like that I can see something in my head and then I can try and work to do it, because I didn't always have the technical skills. I didn't feel like that was valid for a good bit of time. So like to have an artistic vision, but not have the technical capability, to me didn't feel like that was acceptable. And working with Micah, who does have the technical capability or will develop that technical capability, as he has shown repeatedly, like those two things can work together. And it's okay for me to not be able to do the work, but that's not my ethos. My upbringing is like, you do the work, like, because, but either way, so that vision, it did take time to cohere and it required experimentation. But I think the shortest kind of phrase of what is the artistic vision is it's how you imagine age of sale maps, illustrations, printings to be. And it's there's a couple of key parts there, because for a while we were trying to replicate,
right? And
it wasn't resonating with me, at least. I don't know how you felt about it, Micah, but it was like no, and it sucks to do that, but it was then trying. And then one of the things I've learned is like I tend to just try and talk through everything. But if I can find an example and show Micah, it gets us like 100 yards further than me sitting there and trying to figure out all the different words that I should use.
A little bit of a visual learner, on the art side.
Right.
And so, learning that, and it's like, all right, like, okay, Micah just tried 3 different things. Which of these is more of the essence, and how do we feel about that? And then we move in that direction. And it's like, we were trying to figure out which brick we were going to put on the house next, because we think we know what the whole house looks like, but we're not going to actually design it yet. We're designing it as we do it. And that a coherent vision can come out of that sometimes mean that Micah tears down all the walls and rebuilds them in the new vision multiple times. But I suspect that is a part of the creative process, and my project management experience tells me that you put in systems to do that cheaply and quickly early as you can, so you don't maybe go for, the fully polished, 100-hour illustration on the first step. And I am constantly trying to push and be like, hey, can you take like 5 minutes to do it and see what that looks like? I don't know if that totally always works for us, but it's like, how do we get better at that? And Mike, I think, I don't know if we want to talk about it now, but at some point in time, you could talk about either here or on different podcasts, like because I know that you've had a lot of learnings going from someone who's trying to create art for art's sake, and maybe that's too simplistic to look at it, to the work that we're doing is purposeful beyond what you might choose it to be purposeful otherwise. Like, for a customer might be different than an expression. Like, this isn't just a pure expression. Now, I might be putting words in your mouth, but I know that there have been things like a journey around that. And like, oh man, if I was doing this over again today, I would have done a completely different process.
It almost sounds like you're kind of talking about like that art's sake versus, okay, now I'm purposefully creating this to represent a brand or a different thought or idea that somebody else might have conceptualized. And if I'm overstepping there, that's fine, but I'm passing it back over to you, Micah, to kind of respond. But that's what I was kind of hearing there.
Thank you for joining us today on this curious roller coaster of life. If this is your stop, please exit peacefully. Enjoy the rest of your day. If you're ready for another one, just push play. Just a final note before you go, thank you, and thank you for feeling. The distillation and aging process is different for everyone. I'm not quite sure what you're ready for. Sip slowly and enjoy responsibly.
Baby says she's leaving if I don't stop drinking wine. So I switched to whiskey and I'm feeling fine. Drinking that slow smoke.